Hello, everybody, and welcome to Chapter Select, a seasonal podcast where we bounce back and forth between a series, exploring its evolution, design, and legacy. For Season 4, we are covering the Fast and the Furious series. My name is Max Roberts, and I am joined, as always, by Logan Moore. Hi, Logan.
Max, are we sure this is a Fast and Furious movie?
It says so in the title. It says Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs Shaw.
I think it's more Fast and Furious Presents The Rock, because I don't think he's Hobbs in this film. This is just The Rock.
Oh, weird. It's like my very first note in my document says Hobbs is so different than his Fast Five Hobbs.
Yes, that is something we will have to dive maybe not very deep into, but that is absolutely the one thing that stood out about this movie to me, is that it is just Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in this film. I see no character that he is playing.
Should we just insult each other for the next hour? Just different insults? You know, I can't talk to you anymore. It's your face.
The insults are very good in this film. That was fun, but it was also maybe a little overkill at times, because that's probably 20 minutes of the movie almost, it seems like.
Collectively, probably.
They really thought that the prison scene in Fast 8 was so good that they just decided to make an entire movie where they insult each other in the same way.
I kind of like it. I'm here for it.
This is a weird movie, and I have a lot to say. We'll get into it. Let's do the rundown first, and then we'll talk more about our general thoughts. Fast and Furious presents Hobbs and Shaw, which is this the 9th chronological movie in the series?
It is.
It released on August 2nd, 2019. It was directed by David Letich, produced by Dwayne Johnson, Jason Statham, Hiram Garcia, and Chris Morgan. The writer was Chris Morgan and Drew Pearce. The primary actors in the film were Dwayne Johnson, Jason Statham, Idris Elba, Vanessa Kirby, Cliff Curtis, and Helen Mirren. The composer this time was Tyler Bates. The supervising stunt coordinator was Chris O'Hara. Simon Crane and David Kubua were the other stunt coordinators. And then this film's budget was a cool $200 million. And it made $760 million at the box office. The Rotten Tomatoes aggregate this time around for critics was a 68%. And audiences was 88%, which I believe is one of the highest.
I think it's in
the history of the series, and it makes me feel like a truly crazy person. Because I talked to you about this. I mean, we can just get right into it. What our experiences with the movie. I get. Do you have anything to say about this one with your own experience? Again,
we're so close to reality now. It's just like I went and saw it in the theaters. This one is. We touched on it in Fate of the Furious, where they had greenlit spin-offs and other movies besides the core Fast and Furious. So that was always interesting. And it being Hobbs and Shaw was just like, okay, that makes sense. I guess the other touch point or my experience with it is the trailers for this movie show off the whole movie. If you watch all of the trailers, you get the whole movie. That taught me to not watch them for F9, which
do they do the same thing with F9?
Shows the whole movie, so don't watch any trailers.
I mean, we're so close to where this is. I mean, this movie is 3 years old, so I remembered most of the movie from the trailers that I was just seeing in theaters constantly. So yeah, I mean, there's the Russian nuclear power plant scene where they're running around there. You got the end scene where they're in Samoa, the island of Samoa, I think.
They show the whole thing. London, everything.
Yes. I don't understand how this got an 88%. I found this, in the same vein as Fate of the Furious, I found this movie greatly boring for the most part. And I think it's boring because it does feel so disconnected from the mainline series. Like, all these other movies, even the ones I've been down on, have felt part of the larger franchise in some way, and I think they've been able to hold my attention, and it feels like they're building off something. This is obviously a spin-off, but it feels so different from the other Fast movies. And even we talked at the end of the last episode about how, or you kind of warned me like, oh, CGI stuff's about to become way more prominent in the next couple of movies. it is over the top here. Like, this does not feel like Fast and Furious because there's not many cars. There's a couple like chase. There are cars, but the chase sequences and things like that are different. And then the prominence of CGI really just makes it feel completely different in so many ways.
It's only Fast and Furious in name. Really, it's an action buddy cop movie starring Dwayne Johnson and Jason Statham with cameos from other famous actors, Ryan Reynolds, Kevin Hart. Notice you didn't text me during Kevin Hart's reveal, only Ryan Reynolds. But I think that's why this got an 88, is because it is filled with very popular people that folks enjoy, and it's just a funny, big action, go boom movie.
Well, and then, there's a lot of things to get into with the story, and I don't know how we want to start or approach some of this stuff, but there's also just things coming off of the last Fast movies that I didn't understand, or I felt like I missed something. Like, why is Deckard's mom, is it Queenie? Is that her name?
I think that's what
I think that's her name. Wait, when did she get in prison? Did I miss something? Why is she in jail?
She's just in prison now.
It's just like the movie starts and she's in prison, and meanwhile Deckard Shaw, who's like a super terrorist and 2 movies prior and killed Han, is just like, oh, I live in a penthouse now, and I'm
Is he a super terrorist, or was he framed?
Oh yeah, he's still offed Han, even though the next movie is gonna undo that, which makes no sense. It just, I feel like I am like, look, I can get past the goofy action sequences and everybody being superheroes and Idris Elba catching bullets. Fine, whatever, that's fun. But the story is like, I feel like I'm missing things as I watch this, and I'm out of the loop, and I don't understand how we're at this point with some of these characters.
Like the Fast and Furious, we've talked about this, it started from stealing DVD players to stopping nuclear submarines, and like nuclear subs felt one step too far. Now we are at cyborgs, where companies are trying to put machines in man and like wipe out the weak and mass genocide, all this. Like, we've gone from nukes to cyborg genocide. It's just so disconnected.
Fast 10 or 11 is literally, it has to be time travel or something. Right? Like, that's been the joke for a while now.
It's that or dinosaurs, yeah. Some like Jurassic Park crossover. I don't know.
I don't understand how they keep upping the ante with this series. Fast 11 won't be the end of it either. They're going to keep doing these dumb spinoffs here like this.
Hobbs and Shaw 2 will eventually come out.
You mean 2 Hobbs, 2 Shaw?
Oh my God, please call it that. Please call it that. Please.
Fast and Furious presents 2 Hobbs, 2 Shaw.
Or
they could put the 2 at the end of Hobbs, the S at the end of Hobbs is a 2, and then the S in the Shaw is a 2. That would be terrible.
2 and 2. They're, speaking of names, I've been holding on to this bit of information the whole season. I've been waiting for Hobbs and Shaw to share this with you. I don't think you knew this. I've looked it up. Do you know what the Fast and Furious movies are called in Japan?
I do not.
They're called Wild Speed.
Wild Speed.
So the first one is Wild Speed, and then it's Wild Speed X2, Wild Speed X3 Tokyo Drift. Then we get to the good stuff. For the 4th film, it's Wild Speed Max. Fast 5 is Wild Speed Mega Max. 6 is Wild Speed Euro Mission.
Okay.
7 is Sky Mission. And 8 is Ice Break.
Ice Break.
Hobbs and Shaw is called Wild Speed: Super Combo. I love it. I love it so much.
Those are actually way better titles.
Right?
Icebreaker's a really good one. I dig Icebreaker.
Let's look. I didn't even look up F9's title in Japan. Wild Speed Jet Break is F9 in Japan.
Jet Break?
Jet Break. You'll know
now
why.
I'm scared to watch that movie.
Oh my gosh. So I've been holding on to that nugget for a long time because I think Wild Speed Super Combo is pretty awesome.
Going back to the story stuff, again, are there things I just straight up missed that went over my head? Like, are there reasons established, like, why is Shaw not back in prison? Like, at the end of, and I guess this is something we could have talked about at the end of Fate of the Furious as well, where he just shows up and he's like, hey, I'm part of the family now. I'm going to meet this child named Brian.
I assume Mr. Nobody just let him go. He's been brought into the family, so there's no reason to arrest him. Basically, if you're friends with Dominic Toretto, you don't go to jail.
I guess. But even Dom was like a convict for like 3 or 4 movies there and had to keep running around the world to avoid cops. And then that eventually came to a head with, Hobbs there, because he was a convict from F1 onward. Mm-hmm. He had to kind of dodge the cops and lay low.
We can't arrest him anymore because he's a good guy now and everyone likes him. So, which is also why they retcon him in this movie.
But then why is his mom in jail? Like, did I miss something there? Is that established either? Like,
no, she's just in jail now. She's just chilling.
What happens? I have to ask, and you can just tell me right now. Is she in jail in Fast 9? Because I know she's in Fast 9.
She's not in jail.
What are we? Oh well, I guess this movie they established that they're gonna break her out. Yeah, but I don't know. Like, why is she in jail but Deckard's not?
Where's Owen?
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Every one of these new movies, a new Shaw family member appears. Like, first it was Owen, then 7 was Deckard, then 8 was the mom. Now this one's the sister. Like, where's Dad? Yeah, there's gonna be an uncle that shows up at some point here soon. Like, oh, it's Uncle Shaw.
I mean, look, Hobbs and Hattie. They may have a kid, and then you're gonna have Hobbs Shaw fusion.
Who are famous British actors that they can just keep bringing in to have them be part of the Shaw
Game of Thrones cast? You could probably just start tapping.
Yeah, we'll have Kit Harington come in and be the Shaw nephew or something. Hey, guys. Yeah, I don't know. That was the first thing with this movie that I just felt like things felt very off. I do like there are some scenes in this movie that I like cinematically. I like the side-by-side opening montage scene. That's good.
When The Rock takes a spoonful of coffee, I thought of you.
Yes, I wrote that down. I literally just wrote, Hobbs eats a scoop of coffee. Would that work? Like, if you're trying to wake up and get the benefits of coffee, if you just ate a scoop, would that work?
I don't know.
Is coffee on its own caffeinated like that, or does it need to be?
I think
I assume so. Yeah, because you can eat coffee beans and they are caffeinated like that. Because I've done that before. Like, there's candied coffee beans or whatever you can eat, and they do give you kind of a jolt of caffeine.
I guess. I don't know if Hobbs does
it. The man
must
just
be safe.
gets a scoop of Folgers. Ugh, so bad. Best part of waking up is scooping Folgers directly into your mouth. Yeah.
Raw eggs.
I don't know about that one, brother. Like, that's a fun thing. But there are scenes like that I like, but they're just one-off, cinematic things that they do in this movie that don't ever come back again. Like when she's like, oh, we got to pull off the Mick Jagger. And then it splashes on the screen and says Mick Jagger. And then it shows a flashback sequence and explains this whole thing. I thought that was going to
they did
be a refrain and show up a couple. What was the other one?
When they blew up the safe.
Oh,
and their ears and stuff.
Okay.
They did it twice.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a lot of styles coming together, right? You've got this buddy cop side-by-side split. You've got the comedy element. You've got all these action pieces. You've got comedic flashbacks. It's just whatever fits the moment, and it kind of feels hodgepodge at times. And then you've got the super serious evil corporation that with a disembodied evil voice talking over
that
everything.
Was really bad.
You'll remember me, Hobbs.
I was gonna say, is that supposed to be somebody we know? That was so poorly done.
For some reason, I remember it being Ryan Reynolds, but that's not the case, obviously.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. You bring up Ryan Reynolds there. Let's actually touch on some of the cameos real quick. Why? I guess is just friends? My question. That's the thing. And that's actually, this kind of leads into what I really wanted to talk, what I mentioned up front, is this movie has The Rock's fingerprints all over it.
His company was a production company.
Yeah, I know $7 Production was the production company behind this, and he produced it and things like that. I get that. But it really just does feel like he was roping in all his friends. He was playing himself. He was even, we've mentioned in the past, like I talked about in Fast, I want to say 7, when he's in the hospital. I told you, like, there's a cameo where he's watching the TV and the TV is showing highlights of his college football career. And so that's like kind of a nod to The Rock outside of that character. This movie, though, is way too direct about some of that stuff. Like, Kevin Hart showing up just feels like it's like, oh, hey, because The Rock and Kevin Hart, they're in so many movies together, we're going to do it again, and they're buddies, and hey. Like, him showing up was just clearly Dwayne Johnson being like, hey, I want Kevin Hart in the movie. Let's throw him in here somehow. We're buddies. Same with Ryan Reynolds. And then when he's like FaceTiming with his daughter and he does the eyebrow, it's like, okay, we're going a little too far here with just these constant nods to this being The Rock. We know he is The Rock. Can you play Hobbs? Can you play a character rather than doing your rock stuff?
But this movie got an 88 with audiences. That's what people want to see.
That's what I don't.
I'm with you. I wanted Hobbs.
Hobbs, I mean, we may as well get into a larger discussion about this now, but Hobbs has completely eroded as a character, and to the point that I don't even like him that much anymore.
Where's the guy that got off the plane in Brazil and was, asking for his veggies and never ever let him get in their cars? Where's the guy who's Old Testament, blood, bullets, and I forget the other thing. Where's that one? Now it's, I'm going to bust in and tattoo I love cops on your forehead and pick you up and throw you around.
Well, even the stuff at the end of the movie too, with him going to his whole Samoan family, like that's just like Rock stuff at the end of the day. Like, his character's backstory kind of lines up with his own real life backstory, and he even puts his own cousin in the movie with Roman Reigns, and like, that's fine, and I didn't have an issue with that. But again, it's like, the ideas that he had in the movie, it was more just like, oh, well, what's in my real life? Who are my friends? Oh, Kevin Hart's my friend. I'll put him in this movie. And what am I? I'm a Samoan guy, and my cousin is Roman Reigns, and we'll put them in the movie, and they're going to be my family, and they'll fight with. It doesn't feel like he's playing a character anymore at all. And this has been something that has slowly eroded since Fast 5. Like, Fast 5, I felt like I was not seeing him as Dwayne The Rock Johnson, which I was impressed by and surprised by, because most The Rock movies are literally just him playing The Rock. Like, this is not how he is represented in Hobbs and Shaw isn't necessarily a surprise to me, I should say. Like, I'm used to The Rock playing himself in a lot of his parts, but Hobbs was the one instance where I felt like that wasn't necessarily the case. And that has kind of undone itself slowly over time, and I don't like that. It stinks, honestly. And I miss the goatee.
It's a big bummer, but I don't want it to sound, at least for me personally, like, I like The Rock. I like Dwayne. So
yeah, I do too.
I'm still enjoying his performance.
I follow The Rock on Instagram. I see him talking all the time. I say, I'm up at the morning, clanging and banging in the Iron Paradise. Enjoy your gaming, Zoa Energy. Like, I get enough of The Rock unfiltered it is, that when I see him on the big screen, I would like him to be something else other than The Rock that I see on Instagram and Twitter all the time. Like, can you play a character other than yourself? Because I see you as it is a lot. And like, even his wrestling persona is different. Like, he's playing an amplified version of himself, but when he is The Rock in WWE, he's different. He has a different cadence and a different style.
Hobbs has turned into The Rock.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is because Hobbs was a really cool character. So it's a big bummer there that he kind of has turned into just The Rock. And if he ever does return in a Fast and Furious mainline film or Hobbs and Shaw 2, I'm curious which. I assume we're just going to stay in Rockland with his performance and kind of keep that energy.
Clearly his production company's got a hold on this now to some degree.
Right. So and whose money is, where does that go? And this movie was written by the same guy who's written all the Fast and Furious movies since Tokyo Drift. So he has transformed Hobbs as well. I'm sure working together with Dwayne, they collaborate, and this is kind of where we want to take this character and all that stuff. But it is a bummer to see the character of Luke Hobbs turn into Dwayne Hobbs Johnson.
Yes.
So I will say Shaw is the same.
But Jason Statham, I feel like, plays... He doesn't have the broadest... I mean, he's an action star. He's kind of playing the same character in every movie I've ever seen him in, but it's fine, I guess. Like, Jason Statham isn't... The Rock is so different, I guess, to criticize in this way, because The Rock is, like, ever present in front of our faces, whether it be social media or videos or advertisements, or you can't go to the grocery store without, hey, buy my Terramana tequila and Zoa energy. Like, he's everywhere. He's ubiquitous. You cannot not see The Rock. Jason Statham, like, even though he is playing the same character in essentially every movie, it's like, okay, well, he's just kind of an action star guy, and when you're not seeing him on the big screen, you're not really seeing him anywhere. So it's more acceptable in that sense, I guess. And he does fine in the movie. All his quips are good, and he does. Yeah. Him and The Rock do have really good chemistry, I think.
That's where I wanted to take it. The chemistry between the two of them is the glue of this movie. It's why this movie was the first spinoff made. These two together have wonderful energy and great writing and delivery. They just play off each other so well.
Yeah, I agree. It's the best thing about the movie. Now, let's talk about some of the other new characters that enter the fray. We could talk about let's actually save Idris, because I think I have more to say about him than I do Hattie here, who just again feels like I'm another Shaw family member getting thrown into this, and she's fine, but
she's cool.
She's the MacGuffin of the movie too. Like everybody is just after her because she's decided to put a super virus in her own bloodstream. The plot is we haven't talked about the plot at all. The plot is so bonkers. Like, not only is there cyborg people, like Idris Elba's cyborg man wanting every
disease counting down in her body until it activates.
Yes.
A reprogrammable virus.
Yes, that will melt the inside of your body's organs or something weird. Yeah. I don't know. And it's not even really established that clearly why Idris and them want it, other than just control, I guess. Same sort of thing with...
wanted to use it to wipe out the weak, so they'll program it for people with diabetes or Alzheimer's, and it will only kill those people.
Okay, so it's a Thanos sort of thing.
We'll kill the weak. Which this is a company. Like, theoretically, this is a company that you can like buy their products at the store, and they're out here like, haha, we will kill the weak and put machines in people. It's so bonkers.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if there would have been a greater reveal at the end of this movie about who was maybe in charge and pulling the strings, other than just disembodied voice speaking on a screen while a bunch of people clack away on computers in a room, would have been...
You'll remember me, Hobbs.
Yeah, I think it would have been better. Speaking more to the actual villain, though, which is Idris, I think he's the best character in the movie. I like Idris Elba. I like Idris Elba a lot, though. So I do not think he is... I guess I would say he is the over the top things that I do like about these movies, where he's just a superhuman dude, and they just gotta fight him. But they at least try to explain more why he is a superhuman. It's like, oh, his body's been altered, and he's got cybernetics running through his body, and he's been built as a superhuman. Other than when Dom just does Superman feats of strength, and there's no explanation for it. At least they try to establish why Idris Elba is as strong as he is. Like, there's no explanation for why Hobbs is able to hold a helicopter with a chain in this movie.
No, that's absolutely factually established, because this man slides torpedoes on ice, takes drones out with ambulances. Of course he can hold a helicopter.
Like, at least with Idris, he's like one of the most over the top characters they've had in probably this entire film series, but they try to give some reasons behind it rather than just having him come in and catch bullets in his hand and be like, oh, I can just do that because for no reason. Like, I don't know. I think he's fine. And I like Idris Elba. He's also not, I don't feel like he plays baddie characters like this too often. Like, I know he's in The Wire, and I think he's a villain in The Wire, if I'm correct. I've never seen that show, so don't.
I've seen like half of season 1. He is on The Wire though. Idris is good. He's definitely cartoony evil, like over the top, amped. I need to kill them. I need to keep getting my cyborg enhancements until I am the perfect machine. It's just having Shaw be the one that shot him in the head back in the day, like, gives this weird vengeance spin plot that really, I guess, only happenstances even happens because Hattie is involved. He's just cartoony evil, but they do not do the thing where they go and prove how evil he is by doing something, I shall now murder this one person to establish my true villainy. It's established pretty early on. He's just a bad guy with superpowers. The things I guess I associate with Brixton, that's his character's name. The motorcycle I do not like. The transforming spinny motorcycle, like, that pulls me out of it. Like, if we're gonna use vehicles,
that's like the most CGI part of the movie.
Yes, every time he's on that motorcycle, I'm just not a fan of it. I don't like when they switch to his first person view and they show his computer AI. That feels like a cheap Iron Man knockoff to me.
It's more like a Terminator thing. And they make a call to that. Like, I think Hobbs even says that in the movie. Like, oh, so we're being chased by the Terminator. It's like, yeah, that's basically what he is. So,
but he clearly has fun with the role. I think I'm Black Superman. That's a really great line. It's fun.
And then when Hobbs says, "Here comes your kryptonite," later on, that's a good callback to that.
So good. I think that's when he has him picked up and is getting ready to like drop him on his back or something.
Drops him right on his back and breaks his back practically. I think you could tell. That's what I like about Idris in the movie, is that he is cartoonishly evil. I think that works in this series now. Like, that's kind of what, if we're gonna get so nonsensical at this point with what the set pieces are and with what the plots are, then I think the villains need to be a little outlandish as well. And with Fast 8, I don't feel like Cypher was a great villain because she was too serious.
Brixton's involved. He's actually boots on the ground.
Well, he's involved, yes, but he also feels his motivations are more, I don't know, Cypher's motivations are also equal parts crazy, but his are more, like we said, cartoonishly evil, where it's just like goofy, like, I want the whole world to be cyborgs, the evolution of man. It's like, okay, well, this is just dumb. And Cypher's like, I want nukes to check all the world powers. It's like, huh? What?
Why are you here?
One of them is so just silly, and they're both silly, but one of them is more like vaudevillian almost. I liked Idris largely in the movie, but I'm predisposed to like Idris because I just think he's a good actor in most of what he's in, and I want to see the movie where he fights a lion really badly, but that's another point entirely. We talked a little bit before about the CGI usage in this movie, and you talked about the motorcycle a moment ago, and that's probably the most disappointing thing about this movie to me, is that it is so devoid of practical effects, and it's more apparent than ever. And there are some practical scenes I can think of towards the end, but other than that, everything else felt so fake in the movie. And I guess that's what bored me about it, is that usually these movies, no matter what the plots are, no matter what the character motivations are, you can always stay kind of gripped to the screen because the action scenes themselves always look really good. And in this, they look so bad.
It's rough. It's a rough ride, man. And like the London chase, I'm just not engaged there at all. It's cool to see a McLaren drifting around and stuff, but the motorcycle, I will say I like The Rock sticking his arm out, grabbing a guy, and then slamming him against a brick wall, but not breaking The Rock's arm. That's pretty good. But like drifting under the semi trucks, totally just like,
there's a lot of slow-mo in this movie. The final fight scene, there's a ton of it too, but that looks cool, I think.
We'll talk about the final fight and that slow-mo in a moment. But that ties back into the motorcycle, like the CG bike riding on the wall and then jumping through, under the semis and rolling over. It just feels...
Same thing when they blow up the base and running out of there.
And Shaw's driving that four-wheeler thing, and it's just like, whee! All this stuff. It's just way too much reliance on visual CG effects that just feels meh.
Which is weird because $200 million was dropped into this movie, and there are previous movies in this series that did not cost this much to make, and I get like inflation and prices go up over time, whatever. But like there are other movies they made in this series that were closer to only like, I want to say like $150 million to make, and the effects in those are just drastically more impressive.
I think what that is your trade-off between practicality and CGI. And when it's all in the camera and on frame and on set, it looks better. It's more believable and grounded. And no matter how much money you pour into the CG side of things, it's just never going to be as gripping as putting it out on the street. And even the equivalent, $200 million Fast and Furious movies, they really leaned into the practicality of things for their big action set pieces, and that pays off.
Yeah. And I think the thing, too, that's really clear to me about this is that it's not just us complaining about practical effects not being used. I think it really is... When you look at all the most popular action movie franchises, I think part of the reason that many of them are so popular is because of the practical effects that are used. Like, I think of John Wick. John Wick has a ton of practical effects in it, and I think that's one major reason why so many people like those movies a lot. I think it's why a lot of people latched on to these fast movies up until the past couple here. I really feel like it wasn't until 8 that the CGI has gone into full overdrive. Mm-hmm. Yes. So, like up until Fate of the Furious, and then now we've got Hobbs and Shaw, it feels like they've really started to lean into CGI more. But then you look even back with like the older Star Wars prequels. Older Star Wars prequels, that's a weird thing to say now because for some reason I still think those are only like 5 to 10 years old. We're old. Like those movies, a lot of people have complained forever about lack of practical effects in that. And then when they made the Disney trilogy, they're like, oh, well, we're going to make sure to put more practical effects in the new movies, which they kind of did for a bit. I guess what I'm trying to say is you can't undervalue practical effects. And I think a lot of these big movie studios nowadays think that they can just outsource everything to visual arts companies and that'll be fine. And in a lot of instances it is. Like, obviously Marvel's very reliant on that stuff, and that's been hugely successful for them in a lot of ways. But there is something to be said about the viewer experience. I mean, dude, look at Top Gun this year. That's a perfect example, I think, of why that movie has been so popular with fans and why people keep going to see it at the theaters. Or at least they were. I don't know if it's still in theaters.
I think it's still in theaters.
I think it is too. Yeah. That movie has been hugely popular this year, and I think it's because it feels like a movie for like it feels like a major feature film, and this does not. It's just so vapid, and yeah,
it's still
I
in
don't know.
Movie theaters.
Yeah,
I can get tickets right now.
I'm not surprised at all. Yeah, Top Gun Maverick's a great example of that too. And I think if more movie companies are just willing to put in the time and effort and coordination that is needed for practical effects, then there's a big boon to it, like at the box office. And I think it really does strike a chord with viewers. As we have watched all these, that is the one thing that has stood out to me more than probably anything else, is that I respect what they have done with a lot of the action scenes in these movies up until the past couple. So
I will say, in the realm of practicality, while the big action set pieces, as far as the chases and vehicles and things like that, are pretty CG heavy. One area they lean heavily into this movie that is practical are the fights, the fist fights. Those are coordinated. And the director of this movie, was it David Letich. He apparently was a stunt guy and coordinator, combat specialist type stuff in previous films. And so he's bringing that here. And a lot of the fist fights in this movie are practical and have the same actors, not necessarily stunt doubles and stuff. I mean, when you have people like Jason Statham and Dwayne Johnson, that's probably a bit easier to choreograph and all that stuff. But there's a lot of physicality there that I think does pay off, and those are pretty good. And that leads into that final fight, which, Logan, all practical. They built that set, that like rain pit, filmed for a week with rain, real rain, and they used super slow-mo cameras to get those slow-mo shots. So those aren't even CG. Those are real, actually hitting each other type set moments caught in super slow-mo at high quality with real rain. And so I'm really glad that they at least leaned into the practicality and the fighting aspect of this movie.
Yeah, the final fight scene, the final fisticuffs brawl that they have there is the most engaging and enjoyable action scene in the movie. And it's very basic, but the slow motion hits are awesome. The rain pouring down is great. I also do love just the idea behind that scene too. Like, oh, well, he's going to be able to hit one of us, but he can't block both of us. So we'll go back and forth. Hobbs and Shaw go back and forth between being the person to take a punch themselves and then deal a shot to Brixton. And that's fun. I don't know. Like it's this movie's so, I guess, telegraphed with what's going to happen early on. They're like, oh, I don't want to work with this guy. I hate working with this guy. And then, by the end of the movie, they're going to have to come together and work as a team, and that's exactly what happens. But at least the way they go about doing that makes for an enjoyable fight scene, which I got a kick out of. Yeah, the final fight scene itself is good. Let's talk about the other action scenes, though. So we've talked about the London chase. I don't think there's a lot to mention. Is there anything that really stands out that you'd like to mention in the Moscow sequence? Because it's just another poor kind of...
The hallway is a good moment.
The hallway's not bad. Yeah,
the
Jason
hallway's
Statham.
A good moment. A whole lot of bad guys behind that door. Those types of things. Those are good.
Yeah.
That's a great interaction, and it shows off their physicality.
Hobbs gets his kind of Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones moment too, where the guy seems really intimidating and he just punches him square in the face.
Finding a guy bigger, like taller than The Rock, that's probably an interesting casting call.
That guy had to be probably close to 7 feet. So
yeah, it's pretty wild. So that's a good moment. I like the battery torture scene. Gives Brixton a chance to, ramble on, be that kind of supervillain with a monologue.
Monologuing, yeah.
Yeah, and you got Hobbs saying that they can take 5 shocks or whatever. So that, that's a funny, lighthearted moment.
That almost reminded me of a bit from SpongeBob or something, though.
Yeah,
where it's
I can take it.
Talk about cartoonish. I felt like
so I think that's fun. But when things blow up and we're escaping, that's when it all just gets sucked out and just not whatever.
Yeah, the character moments aren't bad. I do like the interactions there between Brixton and Hobbs and Shaw. The final scene, I guess the final big ol' Samoan versus Etion soldiers battle.
Mama, where'd all our guns go? I got rid of them.
I don't know. I have really, in some senses, I think it's fun, and I think it's completely different from anything else we've seen in the Fast and Furious movies, so I'm kind of fine with it. It feels so out of place at the same time, though. Again, when I talk, like I said before, it just felt like the entire idea was The Rock, hey, I really want to inject some Samoan culture into this movie. How can we do that? And that, rather than this being just an idea in the script, that then they're like, okay, cool. It felt unnatural how this was put into the movie in some senses, if that makes any sense.
I'm going to push back a little bit. I'm going to push back just a smidge. In Fate of the Furious, we get that Samoan war cry soccer chant. So at least that's a little bit established. Again, that is just The Rock pouring himself into the character of Hobbs.
Yeah.
And then, like you said earlier, this movie we know where this movie's going from the moment it starts. That also includes when he's having breakfast with his daughter and she's like, look at our family tree. And it's like,
yes,
we have no one in our tree, Dad.
Which is like the most cliched.
Yes.
I feel like that has been, that's such an overused trope. Like, oh, our family is so small. And then
and then we have a big family by the end.
Up. Yeah. And that sets up other family members coming in the fray.
Hobbs going back home makes sense in that cliche way. So where are we going to go? We're going to go to Samoa because that's The Rock putting himself into the character. We get some good character moments there. We get an interesting context for Hobbs. This actually feels more Hobbs than the rest of the movie. The reason he doesn't associate with his family is because his dad was like a criminal and he turned his dad in, and his brothers felt like that he abandoned them and kind of turned his back on his family.
But it feels so out of place compared to everything else. Like it's like 90 minutes into the movie, he then transitions to become more Hobbs-like for about a 10-minute sequence, and then he becomes The Rock again. It's like,
it's interesting there, and this is the one part that makes this a Fast and Furious movie. Family. So we get this whole brother thing. He's got a lot of brothers. It's there. It's predictable. Not super terrible. Not too bad. The fight, the actual, like, let's set up the island and we're going to fight them with sticks, arrows, and bows and stuff. Kind of cool. I like it. And it is practical, the fighting part of it. Now, when we get in a car and we're fishing a helicopter, we enter CG land again. But the actual, like, fist fight part of it, CG or practical. So I enjoy that as well. But again, that's in the fist fighting realm, not the stunt set piece realm.
There are a couple things I just have to mention about this scene. And it's continuity errors all over the place. It is.
You mean how fast the sun rises?
Well, that's one thing. They start the timer on her thing and it's like 30 minutes and it starts sucking out her the evil skin melt virus, organ melting virus or whatever, and starts sucking it out of her. And then they go outside and it's pitch black. And then they start fighting and then it becomes midday. And then you see, by the end of that fight scene where they're all kind of gathered up there in front of the compound or whatever, you can see the clock on her thing and it's at like 21 minutes. It's like, so wait, in a span of 9 minutes, we've gone from this thing beginning to suck out the evil super virus to then them doing their whole war cry chant, to then the sun coming up and it being midday, to then it starts downpouring 5 minutes later, and then it's pitch black again, which I get that storm clouds are. It's just so like, what? Like I don't. I think more time passes. I mean, you'd have to figure this out exactly. But when they hit the clock and it starts counting down from 30 minutes, I feel like 20 minutes pass before you see it again. And it's like in movie, only like 9 minutes have passed on the clock. It's like, what the heck? They started this thing up 20 minutes ago in the movie. It just that sense of time is so bizarre. And then there's one other major thing I have to bring up.
Go for it.
So when The Rock starts his whole Samoan war chant with his Usos and they're standing there, he's wearing like a loincloth and no shirt. And then out of nowhere, 2 minutes later, when he jumps on the back of the truck, he's wearing a shirt and pants. And I'm like, when does it show him?
It shows him put the shirt on.
Okay, well, he puts on pants too.
The pants, I don't know where those came from. They could have been under the loincloth thing, but they definitely show him putting the shirt on.
Okay. So I must have missed that scene briefly. Must have looked away or something.
I can imagine if you missed it, that's super jarring.
I don't think it is. I don't think he is wearing pants in the other scene. I think he is wearing like those shorts or whatever. So I just love the idea that in the midst of this large battlefield, this all-out brawl, Hobbs found time to put on shirt and pants that he must have brought with him for this fight, and then he goes and hops on the back of the car and starts throwing a chain at a helicopter and stuff. Very goofy.
Looking at some pictures, he has pants on under the red cloth thing. There are shots.
Does he?
Of him.
Okay.
So he has full-blown pants on underneath.
So it's not as much of a continuity error as I thought.
The Time noticed it as soon as I saw it in theaters. Like, this is just wild. They filmed the whole thing during the day, and then they've used lighting, editing later,
which they've done in the past. I feel like they did that in Fast 1 as well with the truck scene there at the end.
Yeah. Yes.
Because they leave at night, and then it's like dusk when they start trying to hijack that truck, and then it becomes midday out of nowhere. It's like, what the heck? I guess my question is why they're just not setting these scenes during the day. It's probably because they think certain things pop better at night. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's obviously easier to film during the day, so it's this conflict of
especially large action scenes like that.
Yeah.
I guess the last thing to say, since we're talking about this whole final scene, is just the helicopter stuff in general.
I love it.
You love it?
I think The Rock holding a helicopter with one arm and the truck with the other, and this whole like hook onto, it's dumb, it's over the top, but that's like the Fast and Furious dumb stunt that I love, and just the visual image of that is awesome. So I write it all off.
That was the one moment of the movie where I was like, this feels like Fast and Furious now, because they're doing dumb stuff with cars. So they get it in there at the final second, and they don't do a lot with it, but it is very silly.
Well, the other Fast and Furious kind of moment was when they walked through the garage, and they're like, oh, look at our custom cars. Oh, those are going over to Tokyo. I was like, yes, we got a Tokyo mention.
Yeah, they always got to drop Tokyo in there to make you remember that the Tokyo racing scene is alive and well, even though we've not seen it with our own eyes for quite some time. Yeah, the helicopter stuff was fun. I guess my only problem with it in the moment was I was like, oh man, this is pretty anticlimactic way for Idris to be involved in this final scene. But then obviously they get the final fist fight there at the end. I was like, okay, that rectifies that. That's good, because I was afraid that Idris was going to meet his doom in this helicopter. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of not thrilling. But yeah, they don't do that. There's some other... So we've talked about most of the movie at this point. I think a couple of the other things I would like to touch on, this is something I actually texted you about before we began recording, is just the post-credit scenes in this movie are so weird. It's just... There's 3 of them?
We had more jokes, but they didn't feel right in the movie, so we're just going to put them in the credits.
Well, you got to put an anus joke here as a post-credit scene.
Okay, I think that's good and in character for them. But the one with Ryan Reynolds, like fighting people, and then the one with him bleeding, those felt like.
And then they bring up the Game of Thrones stuff again. I'm like, okay, why are we still invoking Game of Thrones here?
Clearly, like, very of the time. Like, that is a joke that won't age well. That was a very in the moment writing. It's not going to age super well later.
Yeah, I mean, it's only been 3 years.
It doesn't age well now.
I was going to say Game of Thrones is still relevant nowadays, and it still hasn't aged well. I don't really... Ryan Reynolds' character, once again, it's just Ryan Reynolds.
Light.
He's just showing up in the riff with The Rock, and that's it. I'm
okay with it.
No, if you're gonna put Ryan Reynolds in this movie, can you make him a bet? He just literally shows up out of nowhere, and he's just like, "Hey, Hobbs, let's riff," and that's all he's there for. He does literally nothing except show up in this diner, and he's there the whole movie until he's somewhere else at the end on a boat or something.
I knowing that that's the role, I'm fine with it. Now if they go and take this character who I don't even know the name of, and they like make him an integral part in Hobbs and Shaw 2, probably. Like, if they do that, then we've gone too far. Like, if he's just here to be Ryan Reynolds for 5 minutes, sure.
Yeah.
But that's all the post-credit scenes make it feel like too much. I think his 2 scenes in the core movie, fine. But when we have 2 post-credit scenes with him, it's like...
Well, and the way it's set up, too, is there's the post-credit scene with him, and then there's the other one where The Rock's like, oh, hey, haha, huge anus, haha. And then the other post-credit scene goes back to the previous scene. It's like, what? What are we doing here? Like,
I think that's we had too many things and we wanted to fit it in, so we're just gonna throw it all in. There was no editorial decision here.
Yeah, they just threw it in because for the heck of it. Speaking of the Hugh Janus stuff, though, I did like the airplane scene, and I like The Rock's getup when he goes through the airport.
When he goes through security.
My name is Michael. I go by Michael. What was his name? Mike Oxmall or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I go by Michael. I like that whole scene. Kevin Hart showing up. Of all the cameos in the movie, I thought Kevin Hart did do the best job. Him and The Rock have great chemistry. Yeah. I thought that was a fun little way for him to show up and be this air marshal that's, I don't know. He did not feel like he was playing a character. It was just like, oh, there's Kevin Hart. So no one in this movie feels like they are playing a character other than maybe Idris Elba and Vanessa Kirby. Yeah. Everybody else is just themselves. And like we always see them. And that's very odd. Even Helen Mirren to a degree is kind of like that. I don't know. So as we begin to sort of wrap up here, we've talked a lot about the stunts and stuff like that. I don't know if you had anything else you want to say about that or the editing of the movie or anything of those natures. This movie, on the editing front, going back to kind of what we talked about before, there is a lot more visual flair to this movie, and they are trying to, I feel like that's being done to separate it from the core Fast movies and make it more visually distinct in some ways with all the different title cards they're throwing up and stuff, or like the transitions whenever they're going to different parts of the world and things like that, or even like I mentioned before, the Mick Jagger plowing them, splashing that up on the screen. Like there are things like that I feel like are done to try to make it feel more unique, but it doesn't feel needed, I guess. It's just kind of there, like they're doing it for the heck of it, and there's no fun. There's no real other purpose to it. It doesn't feel like it's a sole creative vision or whatever. This was just some stuff they did in post for the heck of it. So yeah, I didn't know if you had anything to say about that. And I do have some stuff to say about the music, though.
I do too.
More so than a lot of other previous films. My God, this movie. So I think our complaint with Fate of the Furious was like, oh, there's like no great license tracks in this, which is kind of weird because Fast and Furious franchise has always been synonymous with having these licensed tracks that appear in the movie and songs that are tied to the movie itself, like in Too Fast, Too Furious. And this movie has that in spades, but oh my goodness, it goes way overboard. Like this is like the Suicide Squad of Fast movies, where they are, I think within the opening 5 to 10 minutes of the movie, there are 3 licensed tracks played. It is not like I was keeping track of it like that as I was watching, and because it starts off with Time in a Bottle and it's a very bad cover, and then it ends with that, and then there is a like when the title of the movie plays, there's a song by Logic that is shown, and then there's another song that plays during the opening scene with Idris and Hattie. I'm like, there's just license track after license track after license track, and it is too much. Like we can dial it back just a bit. I like the licensed music in these movies, but there is a point where it becomes tacky if you do it too much.
I don't know if I recognized a single song, but I'm not surprised by this. The one thing though about the music that I did know and recognize.
Okay, you're probably going to bring up the same thing I was about to bring up.
There's a scene with Idris Elba on screen, and the song is playing, and Idris Elba is singing in the song.
He raps, I think, on multiple songs.
He's in 2 songs according to the soundtrack. He's rapping over scenes with himself in it, and that feels like the meta level there is too much for my brain to handle.
Yes, it's almost kind of like the Black Panther soundtrack, where the Black Panther soundtrack, but that's by Kendrick, and he's rapping about.
It feels like the cameo you mentioned in Furious 7, where The Rock is watching The Rock. This feels like Idris listening to, not that the characters hear the licensed track, but it's like Idris over Idris. We get it.
Idris, I mean, clearly can rap, and he's got a background in hip hop music and stuff, and so he's very
pirate radio, the whole thing.
Yeah, so it makes sense for him to be involved with the soundtrack, but did you pick up on it in the moment? Because
yes,
as I was listening to it, I was like, that sounds exactly like Idris Elba.
like,
Let me check
Idris.
the soundtrack. And then I go and I check, and then lo and behold, there he is on one of the songs. And yeah, it's the song that plays, I think, during the London chase, if I'm correct. And then there's another song in the end credits as well that he is featured on. And I think he's the lead vocalist on both tracks, or the lead rapper. So. And there's some other features on both of those songs, but he is the main one rapping. Yeah, it's very. That was definitely my favorite thing about the soundtrack. Other than that, everything was a little too much. The Logic song was fine to see. I think that was from Young Sinatra 4. I can't remember the name of the song. That's one you haven't listened to. You only know The Incredible True Story. You can get there, maybe, if you keep listening. But yeah, I like that Idris was featured. It was a little too meta, but somehow it worked at the same time. So I'm not complaining.
It's like having Ludacris rap on a track in one of the previous movies.
Yes, it felt very much in that same vein, and that's why I was cool with it at the end of the day, because it seemed like what the series has been known for, dating back to its inception, where you have people that are in the movie also rapping on the soundtrack. Let's talk best car. We've been doing this all season, and I don't know.
Of cars.
I was gonna say this is a very bizarre one to do, because cars are kind of out of the picture for the most part in this movie.
Can I pick Hobbs's motorcycle at the start of the movie?
I was gonna say my favorite was Idris's motorcycle, but I know you hated that.
I just don't like the CG of it. Like the whole.
I don't like the CG of it. I will say I like Idris's character being on a motorcycle, and I think he looks cool.
I just don't like a motorcycle that can do parkour.
Yeah, I kind of was okay with it, even though it was silly.
It's a whole lot of fine. There's probably a cool car in that shot of the shop that I talked about earlier, but it's not really on this page of this the fan wiki that we're looking at.
Yes.
So there's probably a cool car there. Apparently there's a Jeep Gladiator in the movie that they're leaning up against for a hot minute. I like Jeep Gladiators. I wouldn't say that's my favorite car in the movie. The default, I think, is the car that's on the poster. It's shown off in the trailer. It's the one in the London chase. It's the McLaren, because Shaw always drives a McLaren. Cool. It's the cover art for this episode. You know, it feels like it's the most iconic car of the bunch.
The McLaren is obviously the easy one to choose here. It's the standout one of the bunch. I don't know what the little buggy is that Shaw's driving at the end that has a flamethrower attached to the side of it. That was pretty cool. But that was just cool because it had a flamethrower attached to the side of it rather than the car itself being cool. Yeah, the McLaren is if we're truly choosing a best actual car, then I think it has to be the McLaren for sure. That's what I would go with in this instance. But there's not many options. The pickings are very slim. So,
as I'm sitting here with our notes and links and stuff, the end of the casting section of the Wikipedia, listen to this sentence. The Eteon director, a role Keanu Reeves was in negotiations for, does not physically appear in the film, but is also voiced by Reynolds under the pseudonym Champ Nightingale. So that's probably where I thought it's Ryan Reynolds. There's actually one moment toward the end where you can clearly hear Reynolds' inflection coming through, so that's probably why I thought it. Interesting, Keanu Reeves was in negotiations to be the villain of this film.
I feel like I wouldn't want him in this series.
Please stay away,
I
Keanu.
especially would not want him in the spin-off franchise. If they're going to put Keanu in it...
He's a mainline.
Do a mainline. Yeah, you can't put Keanu in.
Keanu would be a really fun villain.
I don't feel like he's played
He would be a fun bad guy.
Has he played a villain in anything prominent?
I'm sure he's got a pretty fleshed out.
I'm sure he has too, but
guy at some point.
I just can't think of anything off the top of my head, I guess.
I'm only thinking of John Wick and The Matrix and Lake House at the moment. So
And what's the one where he's a surfer? Point Break?
Point Break, yeah.
Yeah. And Speed. And he's always the action hero. I can't think of many instances where he's been the villain. Constantine. There's got to be something where he's played a bad guy of some sort. His filmography is quite extensive. Okay. Legacy. What is this film's legacy?
It's the first spin-off of the Fast and Furious franchise.
And that's about it?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, there's really not a lot else to say. I agree with you. This is the spin-off. I would say this film's legacy is also, this is the film where Hobbs died and was replaced by The Rock. That really is the thing that stands out to me the most, is that Hobbs is dead and we are left here with Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Here lies Luke Hobbs.
Yes. I really have not enjoyed, and maybe this is something that dawned on people more slowly over time, if you have been watching these movies as they've hit theaters. I mean, maybe you can speak to this. You have been somebody who has obviously watched all these movies as they've appeared in theaters, and I have not. So I have seen a very quick transition of Hobbs into just Dwayne Johnson over the past couple weeks as we have been watching these. Has it become that apparent as you have watched all of these movies over the past decade?
Yeah, because Hobbs's role has been reduced since 5. It's 5. He was in 6 for a bit. He's in 7 for 2 scenes. He plays a bit more of a role in 8. Like, he was gradually coming down, and so the few moments that he's in those following movies, he's amped up, right? And then by the time you get to Fate of the Furious, with which we've dubbed Hobbs and Shaw 0.5, he's essentially transformed by then, right? By that prison scene. And so he's completely different. Now, watching them so close together now with you, because this is the second time I've seen Hobbs and Shaw. Hobbs and Shaw was a one and done kind of thing. It's so apparent, right? They're two entirely different characters. It's not the same person at all. But it was apparent in the theaters, as you go through. It's just the prominence of his role in the following films was what led to that.
Yeah, I guess my question was just whether or not it was as jarring watching these all in
It's
theaters,
more jarring watching them back to back to back.
Sequentially like this, we've been doing. Yeah. Yeah, because that's been very telling to me throughout this sprawling rewatch. I don't know. Maybe Luke Hobbs will return one day, and to Hobbs, to Shaw. Maybe The Rock will realize he needs to stop playing The Rock, and he needs to start playing characters again. I'll say this: this movie has made me want to go see Black Adam very badly, because I want to see how he is in Black Adam. Because I have not seen a recent rock film in quite some time. Like, I'm trying to think of the last major thing he was in that was not...
I saw Jungle Cruise.
I did not see that.
I like him in Jungle Cruise. He's not The Rock in that.
Okay. See, I think The Rock is not...
Jumanji 2, he's The Rock.
I never saw those.
I'm surprised Jack Black didn't show up in Hobbs and Shaw, really, quite honestly.
Yeah, that's true. They're saving him for 2 Hobbs, 2 Shaw, apparently.
You better believe he'll be in it.
Yeah, I think... I mean, this has been the through-line talking point of this whole episode, is just everything associated with The Rock and Hobbs. And I think I like The Rock. I like him as an actor. And I think what makes me disappointed is I think he does have some decent range as an actor, too. Not a ton, but there are other movies I've seen where I don't really think of him as The Rock. And I just wish he would go back to that rather than essentially playing himself. Like, honestly, like with how he is in this movie, I am 1000% expecting Hobbs and Shaw 2 for him to unironically promote Zoa Energy in Terramana Tequila. Like, that is the path that we are on. And he'll probably be like, "What's up, Deckard? I'm in the Iron Paradise this morning, clanging and banging, brother. What's up?" And it's like, oh my gosh, this is like, there is no separation.
I like how your impersonation of him is Macho Man Randy Savage. The way you say brother and stuff.
I mean, that's exactly how he is on social media. I'm here in the Iron Paradise this morning, 5 a.m., clanging and banging. I got my Zoa energy to keep me jacked up. Our Terramana tequila sales are through the roof. Thanks to all the fans for seeing Black Adam. It's got a 90% audience score. But, like, I do wonder, though, like...
The power dynamic of the DC universe has shifted.
The hierarchy of the DC universe.
Oh, the hierarchy. Is that what it is?
Yes. I do wonder, though, broadly, I mean, in the Rotten Tomatoes impression kind of reflects this. I do wonder, though, if people just, in a general sense, do like him playing himself. And that's why they like to go see these movies. Because Black Adam has like a 90% audience positivity rate as well. And again, I have not seen that, so I don't know if he's actually playing Black Adam, like a character in that movie, if he really is just the Rock in spandex. But maybe people like that. Maybe people like that the guy they see on social media all the time is the same guy that is on the big screen. But I find it really strange.
And I think that does it for Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw. Should get the full title in there. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to find out more about Chapter Select, you can head over to chapterselect.com or follow the show at Chapter Select. You can follow Logan on Twitter at moreman12 and his writing over at comicbook.com. You can follow me on Twitter at maxroberts143 and my writing over at maxfrequency.net. And until next time, adios. Chapter Select is a Max Frequency production. This episode was researched, produced, and edited by me, Max Roberts. Season 4 is hosted by Logan Moore and myself. Season 4 is all about the Fast and the Furious. For more on this season, go to chapterselect.com/season 4. Follow the show at Chapter Select and check out previous seasons at chapterselect.com.